Good day, everybody. Brian here from labsnet.com, July 25th. I am going to show you for the first time, and maybe the only time, a full scale, I call it a pricing engine. The AI calls it a trading system. And this is only for demonstration purposes. The idea behind this, posting the source code and walking through it, is so people out there can, they don't see something they don't like, shred it all you want. Okay? Simple as that. So, again, this is for demonstration purposes only. This is not financial advice. I can't believe I have to say that because there's just people out there that believe in fairy tales and Santa Claus is real. Anyways, let me show you it actually running. So right now, I've talked about the anything to do with TWS in terms of getting data, in terms of sending out orders, has to be in the same operating system where your interactive brokers TWS resides, your trader workstation. So that means not running your Python script in a WSL and running your TWS locally in the host of the Windows. It will not connect. It has to be in the host. The source code, Python, has to be in the host of your Windows. This is run through a command prompt on Windows. So you can see here, I've got my TWS down there, the guy like this, running. And what I'm going to show you here is the actual source code. Now, I should let this run for a good couple of days. So this is now going to connect into TWS. Okay. There it is. Okay. So it's connected, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to start doing stuff, collecting data, trying to make trades, all that. Okay. So you could run this 24 hours, kind of. I've been running um, the TWS pretty well 24/7 overnight, and it seems to still stay connected to interactive brokers. There's no, when it gets knocked out and it stays knocked out at was it 11:45 local time or New York time in my case, it still stays connected. So they must have fixed that. So you may be able to leave your TWS running now, 100 or overnight, which is good. Okay, so again, this is 100% created by AI. The LLM I use is, and I keep saying this, is the Claude 3.7 reasoning. I think we're at a point now where we may be able to do this with Claude 4 because, and whatever reasoning, Sonnet, let's say, the cost may be a lot lower. But when I tested it back when it came out, the difference was not much, but you're still paying for that exorbitant cost. Things may have improved by now, being now almost the end of July. Anyhow, let's take a look at the code. So here's the code. Um, let's see here. So this is the code right here. As I said, I'm going to post this both on behind my paywall and my GitHub. So this is the only time I'm doing this. So I just want to see people, if they don't see something they like, please comment. Okay. Um, so again, this is 100% AI generated. Okay. You just got to know what to put in the prompt. I'm pretty good at that now. Okay. So you may need to go through the iteration. And the one thing you may notice is not running in a GUI, in a graphical user interface, be it Streamlit that I like or whatever interface. It just adds much more unnecessary code and it makes the environment more difficult. So let's say you want Streamlit on Windows, you got to involve Anaconda. Now you got a resource that takes over 20 gigs of data. Not wise. The other thing is that if the way I was doing it is checking the markets every so often, the thing flickers, and I'm not going to go into fixing that as well because I'm just trying to run something with custom strategies against my broker, Interactive Brokers, TWS, and getting data and also fetching data, market data, and at the same time also generating uh, orders as well. So that's the focus. So I'm doing this within the console app and headless app, as the nerds would say. So in here we've got all our standard packages, 100% Python. I probably could develop this in C++, but again, why bother going through the complications of the coding? You're just putting more bloat in there when, for my mind, Python's sufficient. You probably won't be making a lot of trades per day. But anyways, let's go through this. So we set up the logging, and it's colorful because it's kind of like a rainbow. This Colorama package. Again, I don't know this. I've never heard of Colorama. AI gives that to me. That's what I like about generating with AI. So we set up the logging. Okay, here's the name of the log. So if I go in there and check out that, so I remember I like Sublime. It's, as I say, real men use Vim, and in my case, I use Sublime. It's easier. I find IDEs can be really just too much. Anyways, let's take a look at that log just as an example. So you can see here it's showing no different than a Linux-based app. All the cool things that's happening in the log. I just find that it's amazing that we're at this point now to be able to do this. Um, so again, it's called a micro futures trader because it is in the in the uh, prompt. And if you remember, I have done my executive summary. I've done all the different uh, assets out there for both futures and options. So now what I've done is I've taken the summary, executive summary, and basically uh, now I have the ability to generate code from it. That's the powerful thing among all this. So again, we've set up these looping events, and then we have all these different classes um, within the uh, one script. So here, this is an important thing we need to talk about when it comes to the packages, when it comes to interactive brokers. With the packages that I found were either dated or just no good. And if you use the ones suggested by interactive brokers, they're just absolute dog crap to work with. This one, the IB and Sync package seems to work the best. I have showcased some code, how to work it, and it's kind of using that as a role model and being able to use that in the source code here. So these are pretty cool. So we're, as I said, we're doing this in a terminal application. And here, um, it will run some sub routines within the Python itself. I used to do that all the time. Um, and everyone has their own take on if it's efficient or not. For me, it's just what really matters to me is to be able to develop something as fast as you can. Okay. That's what I'm about. Okay. Everyone wants to nickel and dime and split hairs over fast code. I think that at this point is a waste of time, especially when it comes to the Python level, because here the code is more what they call mnemonic, meaning you can actually read it. And that's one of the primary goals of this whole thing. And the AI is very good at that, depending upon your LLM. One thing I will say now, being July 25th, today, a few days ago, the new Qwen 3 coder came out, open source and free. It's pretty 70%, let's say, of the quality of output with this one from Claude 3.7 reasoning. I was surprised on how decent it is. But I've really not played a lot with the Claude 4, so that quality output may be light years ahead. But as a suggestion, you may want to look at that Qwen 3 coder. Uh, so here we are continuing along with these decorators, um, checking on the status. This one's right here is pretty good on the logging front. So depending upon what you set in the status, you can put in blue, yellow, red, green. I like that. And then we get into all the different connection. Static, meaning you can only have one call to this, kind of locks it down in a way. Um, and obviously, it takes care of the complicated, and I will say it is complicated connection into the TWS. But here, if you're going to use this for TWS, playing around with it, this is pretty good code to work from because it works. And I've spent a good couple of days to get it to this point using that package that I talked about, the IB in sync, I believe. The problem with a lot of these packages, they can be abandoned. One prior one I think was pretty well abandoned, left that Python package in a useless state. So let's hope that this package is maintained. As I said before, dealing with the Interactive Brokers API for Python is an absolute mess. Back in the day when you used to deal with Interactive Brokers, they used to give you the ability to download different applications, be it in C Sharp, Java, or Visual C++. And it was very good because it was just one application, it was a desktop app, had all the functionality you want in the Interactive Broker. So you could pretty well build a full-on kind of trading system with it. The only thing you didn't get was the custom strategies. But it was a very good code base to work from. Once they came out with Python, it was like an utter dog's breakfast. I still don't like that. But if there's other brokers out there have better, cleaner APIs, I'm listening. But they probably don't have the breadth of asset class you have access to on Interactive Brokers. So continuing along, here we have the market data. So I'm not sure how this works if you need um, a market data subscription. Again, what we're doing here is working with futures and options. Okay. There's a whole variety of reasons on it. I think futures and options, especially at the micro level, now changes the game for people with small accounts or with absolute limited funds. Micros are very good for that, and they're pretty well designed for that. It's basically 1/10 the price that you pay for a full contract, so that's pretty good as well. Here I put in I've asked for the bid and ask just to look cool if I wanted, but it's an HFT level sort of thing. I could probably build a complete um, uh, front end with this and use this Python script on the back end, and then use that Python script as part of the AI prompting to build a fancy JavaScript front end. I find that's kind of overkill. I think what you should do is just focus on a terminal console application. I mean, you could run it in Linux if you wanted with a Linux-based interactive brokers, a TWS running in that environment. You could kind of get away with that. And same with Windows as I'm doing here. But with the C++ and Java, it gets really complicated pretty fast. And as I said, it's just more bloat. But when it comes to the HFT level, really you're not going to do HFT level uh, kind of trading with any of these retail brokers. You want to do that, you should be with the larger brokers that enable you to be directly connected to CME. And then you're probably going to have a trading account of probably a good couple 100,000. Anyway, so the bid and ask is there. That can be helpful as well, especially when you focus. And remember, and that's why I've been pushing my futures and options course. Because if you know about the call put parity and you know how to use it, no different than the high frequency trading shops, you're in a good company knowing that stuff and knowing how to use it as part of the advantage. Interactive brokers does bid and ask in a weird way. They batch those quotes together, where other brokers just naturally let them flow. That's back with an analysis years ago. Then we have the portfolio analysis again. We have positions, open position, capital, P&L status. That's one thing I will state when it comes to full-on graphical user interface front ends. You can see that all in one shop. If you've seen my uh, Streamlit apps or dashboards, one will call them. It's really nice to see that. But here, it just, especially if you go cloud, it's kind of hard to do, and you're gonna pay a lot more for it. So you focus on the console or terminal apps, headless, and then you can use other tools like your actual interactive broker's account and portfolio to analyze. Another way to do that, and what I'm a member of, I've not really talked about it a lot lately, is the software journaling, or journaling software sites like TraderSync. So you can see how your trades are doing. And the nice thing with the TraderSync is that if you're really trading a lot and you are profiting, or if you're losing, or if you're doing well on certain type of strategies and the like, those websites and services have the uh, AI built in, so it'll help you analyze your trading, make you a better trader. Sort of like what I do, but that's after the fact of trading. Okay, but you can always visually see those trades, open position, all the standard metrics you get on a portfolio analysis. So here we're printing out our our positions, open positions, which is pretty cool. And then the recent trades, I believe this gets logged. I'm sure you can add it for sure in the log as well. I've shown you how the output is. So you could be sleeping, you could be sitting on the beach, you could be doing whatever, and seeing that um, run in that terminal as I shown earlier. So the other thing is the status of interactive brokers, maintaining the connection or the heartbeat. Here it's saying, yep, everything's running cool, cool, cool. So it's obviously connection, market order, sorry, market data and order. Okay. If you saw my prompting, it might be no more than 5 sentences. But as I look at the code, I just add more and more to the prompt. As I said, I have a set of master prompts now. Everyone's asking about them. No. As I'll handle that on Tuesday on my meetup. I'm sure I'll get those questions, but I'll have responses for that. If you want to know, just comment away. Might make a whole video on it. So here you can see everything's looking good. Has the coloring for that as well in the output. Okay, so here's the interesting thing: the Interactive Brokers Manager. Again, AI developed all this. This is what I like about Claude. It gives you more things you don't ask for. Obviously, it's building that off of the cloud. Claude or Anthropic repository of data sources that it has, that where a lot of the output is generated from. I still will never understand how the AI works in the background, but there's a data source out there and a massive one at that, worth beyond billions to host these things. So it will include your host, port, client ID. That's the one you have to protect, so you don't have some a-hole out there pretending to be who you're, let's just say, to hack your trading account as it builds out. This is probably a hacker's delight. Instead of hacking into a bank, now they can hack into people's trading accounts. So you have to guard this stuff really good. So in here we got market data, positions, account summary, uh, the lock status, order history, connection attempts, blah blah blah, max status log, market data log, and all that. So we have obviously the connection into TWS. And again, having this code will save you a lot of pain. And just being able to get it into a running state. That's the whole idea of what I'm showing here. When I post stuff on my memberships, the idea is there to get you to a running state. From there, what you do with the code is up to you. It's just a coding base. And people go, well, it doesn't work. And yeah, well, I'm not here to support. I'm just here to get you and show you code that actually will run and will run in a running state. That's why I provide that. Beyond that, I don't support. Okay. But if it's going to be on GitHub, this one, I'm sure this will be forked and just used, blah, blah, blah. And that's the whole concept of open source. As long as you credit it back to me. So there's all the info there, status as well. Um, and that's really good. And then, of course, if there's exceptions, now this is really important. If you're new to programming and you're putting live money on this, and you're new to coding, this is where it gets dangerous. Because if you're going to run one of these things, and it starts to crap out with interactive brokers for this message, that message, and it may crap, especially on an open position, you could be screwed. You could be losing money. Um, yeah, you got to be a fairly proficient programmer here, especially in Python, to understand these very, very important error messages. That's all I can tell you. Beyond that, whatever happens on you, and you have to take responsibility for it. So if you're coming in with zero knowledge and things do go on the blink, technically with interactive brokers, 99% of the time it will be on you because of something bad in the code. And if you don't know how to code this stuff and you're relying on AI for it, it's fool's gold. That's all. It really is. It's fool's gold, and you will quite possibly lose money. So you got to really know your stuff when you get into this, especially when you're putting live money on it. Okay, so one other thing I need to mention here, with not talked a lot about, is with interactive brokers specifically. I don't see the client ID here. Yeah, there it is. The client ID is very important to understand. I don't know the max. I wouldn't be surprised. So, for instance, if you have an interactive brokers account, a standard account will be 4 instances of within that account. As far as I know, you could have family and friends part of that account, and it depends how you set it up. But that's the standard when you go to interactive brokers. So here, this client ID is very important to know. Every time you connect into TWS, the software, um, every new connection has to be unique. So if you're coming in with a client ID of one, and then you still maintain that connection, and you run the same script, you better connect in with a different client ID because it's gonna crap out on you. Just to so you know that I've seen some interesting code generated by the AI that will give you a unique client ID for every time you connect into interactive brokers. Don't ask me. I just play. I play. You have no choice. You have to play with the rules. Every broker is going to be different. Okay, so I'm just mentioning that there for you. Now, the other thing here is important to understand thread management. With interactive brokers and what makes interactive brokers the Python API, like a dog's breakfast, because it's kind of like multi-threaded and it's very confusing. So you can get a lot of threading exceptions. And I'm going to be honest, I've been coding since I've been 14. Multi-threading, multi-concurrency, I'm not a huge fan of. I like single multi-threaded, believe it or not. Reason is because I just don't want to have to sit there and figure out how to debug this stuff. So if you're trying to do your vibe coding and don't understand the concept of this, you will, without a doubt, lose a lot of money. And if you have multiple threads happening with multiple positions and they go haywire on whatever system you set up, you will lose money. And depending upon the sizes you put out, you can lose a lot. So just be aware of that. That's all I'm saying. But the one provided by interactive brokers in Python, you need a lot of you really need a lot of Advil. It's nothing but headaches. Here in the exception handling, um, all you're really going to get is the error message, and usually you have to go to the interactive brokers user group, I, group IO or something like that. But you got to know about that group. There you can ask questions because if you're going to go to the interactive brokers API support, there is a team. All they're going to tell you is like, yeah, it's connect. That's it. That's beyond that. That's all they're not going to be able to help you figure out what's going on in your code because they're not. That's not their responsibility. All they probably care about is connects. Beyond that, if you lose the money because of bad coding from you, do not expect the interactive brokers API team to help you out. They're not. They'll just give you a basic yes or no, and that's it. Beyond that, I don't see it. It's the same with pretty well a lot of third-party vendors. It's just so that they will remove themselves from any potential liability, especially on large accounts. Okay, so here, we've got the handling of connecting in the TWS and the disconnecting. One thing I'll say about what I saw in the output from Claude, uh, as it was generating this original script, it said we're going to have clean disconnect. In other ones, you don't even know you disconnect. But here with the Claude, it has enough the intelligence in the AI to give you why it closed out. Okay. So that's good. That's good. That's why I like Claude or Anthropic versus any of the other LLMs out there. The ChatGPT is a complete joke. What it presents you, uh, Grok is a little better, but gonna really code stuff like this, you got to be pretty well with Anthropic. I can't really tell you what Quen's like right now, the Quen 3 quote coder. Um, but I will tell you, it looks good in terms of beyond that. I don't know. And remember, it's free. So when it's free, it's not going to be like what you're paying for with something like with Anthropic, right? The other thing is, if you're going through an AI IDE, what I've noticed is when I look at, it's not long ago, it was maybe a month ago with what the LLMs they use for cursor. I couldn't believe how old they were. Like they're going back at least 3, 4 months. They were not using the best LLMs, supported LLM. They were using Claude. Sorry, they were using uh, OpenAI, which is just really useless. Pretty well, especially when you're asking it to develop. This is a 1,500 line script, right? Claude, or sorry, ChatGPT may give you 1/3. Same with Google Gemini as well. It's not very good. Grok maybe a little better, but you will not get the same quality of code in the output as compared to the Anthropic. Going back to the IDEs, I was talking. So they're giving you a bulk of different models only from Gemini, for Gemini and OpenAI. And a lot of them are not very good. Okay, you might get one option for an Anthropic one, like a Claude, whatever. The thing's so old, and more importantly, does not have the reasoning built in to that particular LLM that they support. And that becomes, well, why am I using AI to generate code when the code can be a lot better output with something like, as I said, Claude 3.7, reasoning. That's the key word there, reasoning. Now, as far as I know, Quen 3 Coder does have the reasoning built in. The thing is, when you run the LLM, the only two LLMs I've seen to do this, running with the status and telling you what it's doing, and it does that. The only two ones I've seen do that is right now is the Gemini and Claude. Uh, ChatGPT doesn't tell you what it's doing; it just spits out stuff. Whereas I believe back in the heyday when DeepSeek was running, it would give you what it's doing. I think the Quen also does the same thing as well. It will tell you what it's doing, and it's kind of neat because you'll see in the reasoning where it'll say, "Oh no, the user wants this. Oh no, bad output, my bad. I'll generate this, and it'll compile it. Oh no, no, and that's where I like the reasoning part of it because it will self-correct and give you at best what you're asking for in the prompt. So the prompt has to be very, very, very specific on what you're looking for. But on the other hand, I have run through a few days of where I didn't realize it's hallucinating because I didn't think it could hallucinate, especially on Anthropic. Yeah, I was hallucinating pretty bad because I gave it too much data. So there's a balance there that you need. I haven't seen any hallucinating at all. And when it comes to my stuff, how I do it, what leads to the really bad hallucinating is you give it too much data in terms of, in my case, instruments to analyze, and you're asking it to analyze on each one over a year of option chain data. It will just barf. Okay. So you got to realize that. So part of the process here that you've got to really understand is when you know in my last video to showcase these are the particular instruments I'm really, really focusing on, and they show the most promise. What you need to understand is you want to focus on the most profitable, and it will give you through the analysis I showed what the best option strategy is, or maybe what the best synthetic option with the future strategy to use. Um, and that's really critical why you need to take the futures and options course to understand all this stuff. Because if you want to make real good money, you want to be able to provide it with the best data. For coming back, when you see these different weird strategy types that it comes back to, those are the institutional level strategies that the banks, the hedge funds, and the HFT shops use. That's what I'm talking about. So the thing is, if you specifically know what your most profitable instruments are, the most profitable strategy types to use. You only take the top ones, maybe three instruments. So then you can feed it back into the AI and only use those three and give it all of the available option chain data that you can give it. Okay. Because that way you are able to um, use better forecasting. Okay. And I've always said the more option chain data you can give it, the better further out. Beyond 3 months, I've seen and tried a year and a half worth. It can give you pretty good accuracy in the projections. Thing is, you got to know what to prompt it. You have got to know what data to provide. Otherwise, it's going to crazily hallucinate on you. And it can happen. It happened to me. Anyway, so just that blurb there. So obviously, if at any time your connection to the TWS blows up, you've got okay error handling somewhat here. I don't think you can really improve it. And again, the question will always come up: why are you not doing this in C++? Reason is at this point, if it blows up with a connection for whatever reason, and I've seen it, um, and the error messaging is just sorry, we had a code default segment, whatnot. How do you debug that with C++? It's impossible unless you're really good, low level, low latency, one of these nerds when it comes to C++ and allowing it to run through all your debug processes that you need to do through an IDE. So understand that. And again, if you're new at this at coding, this is where the danger comes in. So take heed on it. Okay, so there's that. So these are the different events within this class with a connection to the Interactive Brokers TWS. Here's the interesting one: on ticker updates. So if there's a change on the tickers, it will start to do whatever the change is. So look, significant price change for this symbol. Here's the data. Blah 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 blah. Okay, that's all part of the AI generating this. That's the cool thing. So if it's automatically going to change the position on an open position, it will log that and show you that. On top of that, if you have changes to your account information here, maybe something to do with liquidation, available funds, the margin, there's that. And then there's the execution as well, handling and spitting out all the necessary information on your account, commission, execution, order ID, account, and all that. One thing that's very critical to also know when it comes to logging, you want to log everything. Okay. You want these Python scripts or whatever your automation you're using, whatever language, it's logging absolutely everything. Because if there is something that does blow up and you don't have the logs to showcase that, and especially the event ID, we'll call it, you're going to be in trouble because then when you go back to, let's say, Interactive Brokers to argue over it, they need to know the event ID and what caused that. So these are sort of things that you need to ensure that you're logging. Okay, so that's all in the object ID that gets returned. So you need to ensure that that's included. And again, I'm showing you the first cut of this first version of this from AI for actual order, live order potential with interactive brokers through the trader workstation with Python. You can imagine how more sophisticated this gets with another programming language. Here, that's why I like Python because it's easy to understand. And just look at, we're only at line 600, okay? Um, and you could see we're 1/3 of the way. Okay, so again, here we got market data, positions, account summary, order, um, all that fun stuff, subscribe to the market data, blah, 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 and it gets all logged. And if you're a beginner at this, man, you got a lot to learn. You can't just ask it and use the code that it spits out and then just expect to be making millions of dollars because it's not that easy. So here is the interesting one. Okay. So here we have a micro future contract. I've kind of gone over the micro, the mini, and the full contract. Again, um, to understand that when it comes to how to handle that on the trading front, it's critical to know that because that's why the futures course that I have will kind of walk you through that. And not knowing that you're just probably going to lose a lot of money on the table, or you're going to have it tied up in other, call it opportunity costs, meaning if you're just one of these buy and hold guys doing the dollar cost averaging with Bitcoin, why would you put money into that and have your money tied, your capital tied up in something that's not moving and just going sideways when you could put that same money into something right away that's performing and you get a return from it? This is the problem I have with a lot of the um, unfortunate, I just call them amateurs, man, really, that don't understand that. They just read their Reddit or YouTube or whatever and think they're geniuses because they're not, because they don't fully understand it when it comes to risk and portfolio analysis, that we have things like that. And again, that's what that futures options course walks you through. All the hidden things you wouldn't think of. But this is how a lot of big portfolio managers work, and that's how they think. Okay, so we have here the micro option contract, all the fun stuff that goes with it, strike price, what side we're on the exchange, um, and the messaging that goes with it as well. Okay, so there's that. And again, if you want to make the most amount of money, literally, in anything, options market is it. And it all comes back. Why? Because of the option chain. The option chain is one of the only assets or any kind of investing that's telling you what traders are doing down in the future. It could be 3 months out. It could be a year, year and a half. Nobody analyzes the option chain data. It blows my mind. But on the other hand, that's why it's so freaking expensive. Because knowing that, it's basically your future is being handed to you on when what these instruments are going to do. Um, and it's in if it's, especially if it's a highly liquid asset like an ES or an oil or gold or maybe even Bitcoin, it's right there. It's telling you what the professionals are doing, and they cannot manipulate that because this is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is regulated beyond belief. And none of this fancy, none of this hocus pocus stuff that can happen on a retail forex broker or some shoddy crypto exchange as well. And especially now that I've been getting under attack under these CFD brokers, which are absolutely dangerous. These are fake markets. I've had numerous CFD brokers come to me going, "Hey, yeah, you wanna talk about our broker? We'll give you a cut on all the customers from your potential customers. We'll give you a cut on that." Um, these are fake markets. That's all I can say, and that's why I say no to them. They're another way of saying that they're a fraud. Okay, so enough diatribe in every which way. Anyways, back to this, the place market order. When you're starting out, you don't want to trade live money. You may want to comment out anywhere that has the actual placing order. Okay, because if you're just going in trading live money and you haven't really tested at least the core functionality of real live money being traded, being a market order, a limit order, or whatever, again, the thing could blow up and actually take on a lot more contracts or other units or shares that you didn't want because of some weird bug that the AI generated. So again, I'll warn you, if you're new to this, you got to be aware of this stuff. All right, so knowing all this fun stuff, okay, right here, placing market order gets logged. So you got to look for the actual market order. So this is it here for market order, blah, 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 blah. Okay, logged, everything's logged, return trade. Um, so what you're going to look for is anything where it has a place order by interactive brokers. Okay. If you're starting out, what I would do is kind of comment that out and then kind of either that or use the paper trading. I don't know if that's useful or not, but yeah, just be aware of what's going on here. Because right here, yeah, as an example, I've commented this out. Okay, this is not the smartest, this is not the most intelligent, but just to kind of play it safe as an example, just comment out the actual order to interactive brokers, and then it's going to trade the trade was object on that comes back will have a bunch of data in it in the object. So me putting in this non is not smart, but again, just to test it out. Um, and because this trading object will have probably some necessary information that will be useful coming back from uh, interactive brokers, the broker. Okay, so just as an example, you may want to, as an idea, do that if you're new at it or whatnot. Just don't want to take the risk. Then we have also, so the one I'm showing you here is the market order, the limit order as well. Um, so again, you're going to have the same thing where the place order is going to get commented out. Not smart to do, but it's kind of like, well, I don't know the code. It could put in 100 shares when it's supposed to be 1 share, 2 shares, low risk, just to test it out. So kind of figure that out, right? All right, so we've got all the exception. Now, let's talk about the differences in my experience with market orders versus limit orders. Now, from the cost perspective, one is going to be much cheaper than the other. I just can't remember which. In terms of execution, market orders are placed right there on the spot, um, which is my preferred way of trading. Because if I'm going to place an order, I don't want it to wait a couple of minutes to do the full order. Such as me. Okay, might be more expensive actually. I just can't remember which is which. But with the limit order, if you've got 100 shares, it may not do the full 100 shares. It may put it out there 10, 20, and it could take maybe 5, 10 minutes to complete the trade on the place order. So it's slower. Just be aware of that. So if you're, trading something and all of a sudden it starts to go down, um, yeah, you might have a problem on the flip side on your sell or when you're uh, on your sell, um, because it may take too long to do and it may not get completed. So, just as an example, why I prefer market orders. Again, everybody's got their own way of doing things, but again, I want to hear people's comments and experiences on that, especially on the cost of it from the commission side from the broker. All right, so we've got the limit order, blah 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 blah. Now let's talk about historical data. This back in the day, interactive brokers kind of never charge for data. Now they do. This is like a big moneymaker for interactive brokers. Um, so you can pay a lot for it, especially if not really actively trading, and it's going to eat into your account. Just be aware of that. And it could range in what kind of data you want. With most brokers, you could pay $50, $100 a month. And if you're not profiting, it's going to eat uh, into your account. So you're basically urinating money away. So be aware of that as well. Again, standard things here with the exceptions and logging as much as you can. Coming back to here on these trading objects, I think these are really, 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 really important to understand. Even though the logging might look the way it does. So here, this is very, 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 very critical. Um, in the trading object that comes back from the actual order, I would actually convert this into a string and log that separately into a separate file. Okay, because that trading object will have everything in that trade. The order, there's going to be another ID for the order, and all these different things that will be very unique to interactive brokers. what you need to be very cognizant of, if you have a real problem with interactive brokers in a trade, and then you're disputing on, because you have the everything that comes back in that trading object, and you've logged it, and the date, really the time, the snapshot time and date, and you go back to interactive brokers, they can't dispute if there is an actual problem at their end. If you don't have that data, you're screwed. Okay, that's something that you got to be very aware of, so that you're not going to potentially. I'm not saying they do it, but potentially, if big if interactive brokers is cheating on you, at least you have all the records there on that order for both the buy and the sell. If there's something wrong, you have everything logged there. And I've seen trades with 3 different IDs to it. And you've got it there. And then it's helpful when you dispute it, and that their support can look at it and go, yeah, we screwed up here, sorry, or whatever. And a lot of people aren't tracking that, right? And then they just whine, and well, you're screwed because you joined the broker and you're now beholden to their terms of service. But here, when you track and store the actual objects and everything that comes back from that trade or order, you've got it logged and you store it somewhere and you secure that. That's like gold to you. If there's a problem, that you have that data to go back to interactive brokers, say, this came from you guys, right? So just to be aware of that. Historical data, you got your bars here, and every asset class has different sets of data, as well. From both my experience, if it's sub minute, you bid and ask. If it's an open, high, low, close, it's gonna be different as well, beyond a minute. So here we save the logs, blah 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 blah. Now this is the important stuff here. This is, again, let me say this and make sure I'm very clear on this. The AI will generate different types of ways they handle a trading system. Okay, this is a demonstratable trading system from AI using Claude 3.7 reasoning. If you do this and you run it again, you may get a totally different output, or you may get a different output from a different LLM. Okay, so this can change. So here's your class. Here's your functions within that class as well. Okay, and some may be really good, some of them may not be. Okay, so you got P&L, update the P&L, check in the signals, execute the signals. But you can see here, these are empty. So if you go back in the AI and the response saying, hey, if you want to build beyond this functionality, you can do it. Just tell it what you want, and it'll generate extra functionality if you want to have the capability for signals, for execution trade, closing price, and so on. Okay, and add all that extra functionality in there. You can do it. But again, on the first draft, you're not going to get that. You have to specifically ask for it. And again, it depends what you want to do with these trading platforms, quote unquote trading platforms, these pricing engines, whatever you want to call them. Okay, that is up to you. All right, so very, very important to understand this as well. Um, with the concept of AI coming into the market now, and especially coming into more industry level trading platforms, there's going to be a lot of big companies that will have code that is over 20, maybe 30 years in C++, Python, whatever language it is. They will not touch that that code base. Why? Because it works. Um, a great example would be Goldman Sachs using SecDB and Slang, and that thing's probably been around since the 80s and looks like it has been, but they won't update it because it works, right? So my point here is every firm will have their own unique way of developing and architecting a trading platform. That's why I'm bringing this up. So if it's a newer fund, it's gonna be newer, a newer type of patterns used in the architecture, which is fine. But now, last 6 months, with the AI going pretty well mainstream, and especially if it's agentic based, uh, it's now a totally different style of coding. and architecting the software. From what I've seen, you have so many options now. You have RAG applications, you have the MCP servers, and then you have the agentic itself. I have put up and experimented with uh, one of the LLMs, and I've got it in my Quant uh, membership elite library of packages that I basically experimented with, but it's there. I've got one example for MCP, got another example of RAG, and then there's a specific one for agents. Okay, but this is specific for building out a trading platform, a big one, a colossal trading platform, and again in C++. I will tell you that the agents that will get coded up in the AI process, each agent will have its own um, unique functionality. Okay, not only that, it's smart enough where the architecture will be very modular, and then down the road you can add in new agents that will be part of that code base, and you can kind of do that easily somewhat. But the problem is, uh, uh, if you looked at the code, especially if it's agentic based, and specifically it's C++, it's very complicated coding. I am not going to lie to you on that. So I don't know how they fit that in with the low frequency, ultra low frequency when it comes to agentic based coding in it. Let's call it a high frequency trading platform uh, across a corporate um, enterprise. I don't know how they're going to do it. And the problem is, if they come up with something today, 3 months, it might be something better. And a good example is that the RAG and the MCP servers are as well changes all that and just adds in the confusion with all the different options out there. But uh, as we all know, there's all these things that get all hyped up where agents may not be the future as they thought. Because look at just technology. There's a lot of hype on a theme in software architecture and it just dies out. As an example, object-oriented programming was a big thing, and from what I'm seeing, there's fewer and fewer shops wanting to use object-oriented more now because of the bloatware that comes with it. So we're at that really defining moment on how we move forward, especially from a trading platform perspective and how we build it with the AI built in and how do we architect those kind of platforms. It's really, really confusing. But when you add an agentic AI into a C++ high frequency trading system. If you're confused just doing it the old way, I can guarantee it's going to be 100 times more confusing um, in the agentic way. But with the NCP, which came from Anthropic, it's kind of interesting. And there's lots of third party server companies out there having these MCP servers that allows you to connect into that server. And as part of their uh, endpoint API, and being able to ask questions within the MCP server or query or prompt, and then get back your result from the AI, whatever they use. It's very interesting times, but I think it's still going to take a while to see which ones become the standard. It's too many right now, so I just want to mention that. This is a very simplistic one for demonstration. And again, we're using still object oriented, but this is so primitive in one script. So as the example here, we're now adding new classes for specific strategies for specific assets or instruments. So you can see here, this one's for crude oil and micro crude, and it's going to use probably the strategy class as well, I would think. But you can see here all the objects that come in with this for an arbitrage strategy. And again, this is part of the request I put in the prompt, say, here's the specific type of strategy I want you to code up. And this is in the prompt you put in. This is the specific kind of strategy I want. In this case, arbitrage. What kind of arbitrage? I don't know. You told me to use arbitrage, so I'll ask you to put it in. And specifically for micro crude oil. And this is what I came up with. So here it's focused on primary, secondary symbol. So it seems to be using ETF. I didn't ask for that. That's what it came up. And again, if I ask for the same prompt, it's going to give me a different coding result, just so you know. And here we have entry, exit, and it's a Z-score. Now it's also using the look back, using different data frames. Obviously, with a data frame, it's slower. I don't care about that, but people will always split hairs over it, and especially in the world of C++. And it just gets more and more complicated, and eventually the thing blows up. Golly gee, I wonder why. So here it's still maintaining the spread mean, the spread standard deviation, position direction, which is interesting, could be long or short, entry price, primary contract, secondary contract, and again, using the microcrude oil, and for the arbitrage is using the ETF oil arbitrage, which is very interesting as part of that strategy code. So that's the arbitrage between the microcrude oil future against the oil ETF. Pretty smart. Was that what I wanted? No, because I just generally asked for that. So now it's building out the initialization of all the data within this strategy. So in this case, and again, I just let the AI do its thing. You can reverse engineer this, get the first month micro crude oil contract, get the equivalent in the ETF. Okay. Subscribe to the market data. Boom, boom, boom. And you got to make sure that you got enough uh, in your subscription, in your data subscription, in this case with Interactive Brokers. Golly gee, you could be running 20 of these things, right? So you got to make sure you have enough in your account in the subscription to allow this. So just remember that. Okay, so it's going to subscribe to it, and what's going to do, who knows? So now it's going to generate the signal for you in this function here. So if it's active with the primary contract or secondary contract, this is very interesting coding here on the simple arbitrage. Okay, so the symbol in the primary, it's going to go through a loop between, so it's going to go through all the data between the primary symbol and the secondary. Again, the micro oil contract versus the ETF. Very interesting. And again, I didn't go into the specifics on this. I could, but I just let, as I said in the prompt, build me an arbitrage strategy with micro crude oil and whatever else. I didn't say whatever else was. It came up with it using an ETF. Okay, so here's the logic going through the market data. If the symbol in the market data in the last, okay, so now it adds some new data, uh, the current time and the last price. Okay, so the symbol will add it to its own, I guess, data frame internally within this class and uses the look back as well and tails it uh, based upon whatever the look back's set at. All right, so very interesting here. I've got enough data for all the symbols. And this is what I like about this particular AI or LLM. When I hear people say, don't comment, I think they're virtually not smart because this line right here will save me all the time trying to guess what this is doing. The AI will put it in there for you, whereas lazy programmers will assume that you'll be able to figure it out. Okay, and again, the key word here from a person doing this for quite a while, it's got to be mnemonic, and this little comment makes this code mnemonic, meaning it's easy to read. I know what it's doing. I don't have to run it through a debugger to figure it out. Okay. Okay. So there you go. So it's going to see if there's enough data. Okay. So now we're going to calculate the spread ratio, the difference between the primary and the secondary. So the future contract of the micro oil and the secondary on the ETF. Okay. So again, these little comments generated by the AI is helpful. Okay, this is the strategy itself on an arbitrage. For the crude oil versus the ETF, need a scaling factor to account for the contract size. So MCL is 100 barrels, so adjust based on the relative price on the ETF. So there's your scaling factor right there. Example. So this might not be the most accurate, might not be the best, might not be the most optimal. Again, this is what I'm saying about when you need to know. And we're not even applying any quant math here at all. And it's one thing to be a genius at that, fine. Genius at the at coding as well, being computer science. That's fine too. But this right here is the critical step that you got to know about trading. So you know what you need to apply when it comes to the scaling factor to use. Okay. Because if you do it wrong, it's going to throw everything off. That's where the trading is more important than any of the other skills that you have. Hate saying that, but that's the truth. Okay, so we don't adjust the calculated spread here. Uh, so here we have the spread of the primary price, secondary price, and the scaling factor. So now we can calculate the last spread. Okay, fine. So now we're going to calculate the z-score. Don't ask me what a z-score is because it would take me eons to tell you that. But that's where the quant thing comes in. Again, this is not retail um, smart money, dumb money stuff or using some technical indicator. This is using simple math, quant math, I guess you could call it, and do know what to do with when it comes to the this particular strategy. Again, 100% generated by AI. So here we have the spread mean and the spread standard deviation. So we calculate the mean, the spread mean, and the spread standard deviation. Those are usually some of the more basic math that's used, along with the well, mean is the average. Standard deviation could be some other very basic mathematical routines used. So now we have the baseline message on the standard metric, meaning here's our mean, here's our standard deviation, right? Okay, so we log that and boom. Okay, so we calculate the z-score using this. Here's the thing, what I've experienced with a lot of talking to people from within these HFT shops. There's a lot of third-party libraries, let's say like Quantlib or other third-party related um, uh, math related libraries they could pay for. A lot of the shops may not go for that. They're going to develop their own libraries or packages for internal use only, um, with their own formulas and using their own basic math. They will not use third party. And the reason is, and I follow that same path. So I will use virtually no dependencies in my code generation, and let the AI generate all of the code when it comes to math generation and seeing how the formulas are calculated. And to all, not only that, but to verify them. So you want that in the code yourself that you can see. So when you're prompting, make sure that you're not using any dependencies. Let the AI calculate it for you. Okay, really critical. So here we're using the z-score with the historical data. Okay, so we're using all the fun. I just went through that. So here we have our last spread. Here's the z-score calculation right here that we can see. Okay, we have that in the class. We log it. Okay, and then we have our signals that we build out as well. So we have a position direction set up, long or short. If the z-score is more, that's calculated from within the instance of the class, spread is too wide, expect convergence. And many retail people go, what's convergence? This is why you got to know more of the quote unquote institutional level stuff. Okay. So here is the condition. So we have a signal math entry. Um, it's a short, okay, with the Z score, so we can log it and accurately price it. Okay. So here's all the info. Here we have the action on the entry, direction, and Z score. If it does the opposite, meaning it diverges, we basically do the opposite on the long log of blah, blah, blah. So, and then we have a position, okay? So if you have the direction is long and the Z score is greater than the internal maintained within the class, or you're shorting, basically is it, well, if you don't know what this is, this comment is your lifesaver right here. I'm sorry, right here. This condition right here. So if you know your current Z score and the internal one in the class, the instance, it's going to either converge or it's going to do the opposite of the divergence. So in here, you can see that's what it's checking for. So you're able to generate a basic signal for the exit. Okay. Okay. So that's your signal generation right there. And then also within the class, we have our execution here on the actual order. Okay. So this is the basic crust of how the strategies are handled within these trading platforms, call them that, or the bots. But again, the smart money, this is what they do, and there's a dumb money. Those folks that are don't care about this stuff, obviously, and that's why they lose. They don't peel back and understand from the coding perspective to know what's going on and the logic behind it, tick by tick, minute by minute, hour by hour, whatever your time frame is. So here we have our potential entry. So here we're able to track all our signals within the data frame. Okay, so it's going to cycle through each one. If the signal's an entry, and the direction we calculate position size based on current price and capital. Again, these are really important to understand. But a lot of people that don't code will not understand this and most likely will not care. That's fine, but then they ask, why am I losing money? Well, it's right here. If you knew and put the effort in, understand from the coding perspective. Okay. This is not rocket science stuff from a basic coding. Okay. All generated again by AI. Okay. So it's not complicated. Okay. But you do have to put the time in, understand this to basically doing what I'm doing in this video to reverse engineer it. That's the important thing. So again, we have our primary price. Again, that's the oil, micro oil contract. And then we got the price, the value of it, along with the associated ETF or the secondary. Okay. Calculate appropriate quantity for each instrument. For micro crude oil contract is current price times 100 barrels. So it does that calculating for you. Boom. Primary capital times zero point 0.4. Where does this zero point 0.4 come from? Most likely from my executive summary that I fed it as part of the prompting. I have monster prompts as part of that executive summary when I go from the executive Word document, report, what do you want to call it, actual generating code. And usually it's going to be hard coded. So that's where the 0.4 is. This may be generated by the AI itself. I don't know. And this is the problem is if this was a human coder and said, this is what zero point 0.4 means, then I know what it means. But if I don't have a comment, like in this case, I don't know what zero point 0.4 means, right? That would be helpful for me. So I'm going to take a major assumption that's from my summary document. And that's what I'm saying when it comes to if you're not documenting or commenting your code. I know people that do it as a profession to protect their job are stupid. And if I was running a shop and I know I had somebody that does not comment in their code, they'd be out. And they won't get one reference from me. Others saying, yeah, we fired the guy or whoever. Okay. That's why it's important to follow that standard. These are little comments, but unfortunately, I'm not expecting the AI to generate what this point 4 is. I could probably ask for it. But in this case, I'm not going to bother. Okay. But it's important to kind of understand what that references to. But I would not be surprised as part of the coming either from the simulated code I've shown with the Streamlit app or from the executive summary, because it's all going to come back from the executive summary, which comes back from the individual full on instrument report that I go through all these phases to generate. But here we are. So now it's going to calculate the appropriate quantity for each instrument for position sizing. So again, along with the straightforward calculation. Okay, that's all fine. So we know the size of the contracts we want, or position sizing. It will log it. If we're in a long, then it's going to place the appropriate positions as well. Oh, sorry, yeah, place the appropriate in this case market orders. Buy, sell. And it's doing a buy and sell because you have a buy on a particular asset, and then you have a sell on that secondary, and that's why it's called the arbitrage, where you profit off the hopeful difference. So it'll tell us what we entered here based upon the spread, primary, blah 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 blah. Okay, and success, yay. Okay, and it does the opposite as well. So we'll do the buy and the sell based upon all these different conditions. Then we update the state, okay, as well for within the stored instances of this data within the class itself. Okay, and that's kind of important to understand the principles of programming. Like if you're trying to do this on your own and just vibe code it and you think, oh yeah, great, it's making me money, and it blows up. Because I said you're gonna have the same problems before, and then you go through the code and you go, what does this mean? What does that mean? And you don't know. Well, you basically SOL. So again, we have our dictionaries for the tracking, blah blah blah, and that's the key here, the tracking. Okay, very important. So if we have a signal that states it's an exit, it's going to do all of the opposite stuff. Okay, so it's going to do everything in legs, do a long, short. I'm not going to go into that. And here's probably what this means. Okay, so that's probably what the point four is referencing to the weighting. Yeah, so um, that's what I'm thinking. It's the primary weighting on this position where you give 60% on the primary instrument, which would be the future contract and the oil, and then secondary on the ETF. Okay. Again, you could probably make it a lot more sophisticated because this is obviously hard coded, but you could probably make it more intelligent by looking at the code, running it, okay, and then you go back in the code, supply the source code back in the AI prompt and say, make this more dynamic based upon these conditions. You can do that. And one thing I'll say when it comes to hard coding versus dynamic coding, I guess you call it, especially on these values, you want to make everything as generic as possible. That's all I can tell you. Programmers know what I'm talking about when I say that. So here we have again calculating the P&L. Okay, primary profit loss with the weighting, secondary with its weighting times the capital allowance. So it's doing everything in a percentage. And we update the P&L object, log it, and then reset everything. That's the state of within this class. Close out the positions, blah, blah, blah. And remember, this we're already an hour and a quarter into this, so this is a very primitive coding demonstration. You can imagine how sophisticated it can get. We start adding the quant techniques. And again, this is just using Python, and this is the easy one. Imagine doing it in C++. Ooh, that's why people get paid the big, big, big dollars, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million packages. I can guarantee you probably 99% of the people have already dropped off on this video because it's too complicated. It's just a primitive Python script. But those that want to make money and motivated will be still here and probably watch this to the end. I salute people like that. Anyway, so going back to closing position, closes it out, closes the position, selling. So it does all the logging, both on the primary, secondary position. Again, that is uh, the future contract along with the ETF. All right, so then here's the status here on the symbol, the Z scores, entry and exit, spread, direction, entry price. Huh? Now it gets even more complicated. Let's talk about the portfolio. Okay, so you can clearly see in the architecture of this and how this class is structured. You can see here, you could probably put multiple strategies in there. That's all I'll say. What I just showed you, again, is the micro oil futures arbitrage strategy. If you're tracking another instrument, second one or third one, and it's a directional long, you'll have a separate set of code for that as a separate class. In this case, how the code's generated, and all of that will be stored in here along with the specific, call it sub strategy or the specific strategy capital allocated to it. That's part of the process of what I'm doing all along. So I'm providing it. Here's $100,000 portfolio. Give me the calculations on the weighting, how much you would allocate for optimal return using this type of strategy, using this particular type of data I just gave you through the futures contract. And also at the same time, I'm giving you all of this wonderful option chain data and build out a custom strategy for that. And it did that with this as well. But it can get a lot more sophisticated as well. We're just doing a very, very primitive, basic strategy. So imagine right here, we're tracking in the portfolio strategy capital, P&L history, the capital history, and the timestamp. So each and every one of these are separate objects within this particular portfolio class. Okay, so it all gets logged. We can add a strategy as we activate it. Okay, um, and we can track that. We can also remove a strategy from within this portfolio class. Okay, so that's quite interesting how it's handled from within the Python. As I said, uh, how and why from a coding perspective on C++ with, let's say, a high frequency trading firm, a big one, multi-billion dollar one. This would be a lot more sophisticated, probably, it would just be 100, maybe even 1,000 times bigger than this, more sophisticated. Okay, then we have to allocate capital, as I said. Um, this one here, so we have our total allocation. So in the prompt, I could say, yeah, here's your total allocated 50,000, 100,000 if you get really big accounts, or if you're just starting out like me in this whole thing with $2,000, that will make this allocation very small. So you can only do so much with those more smaller accounts. So that's all going to get stored internally within this class stuff and portfolio class specifically. So here we have our strategies to execute them. We allocate them right here. Then we have our allocation, and we're building out a strategy based upon the allocation that's built out and custom from the prompt that I feed it from the executive summary report. Okay, confusing, I know. Then we can have a strategy name. So you could have, in my case, maybe 2 strategies for each instrument. You could have only 3 instruments. In my case, it could be oil, it could be Russell 2000. I can't remember the other one. But whatever it is, whatever's performing at that time. So you can see here, we have our strategy management here. Our capital gets associated with it, and everything gets allocated with the messaging and the logging part of that. So here, I don't know how often this will do it. We'll update the P&L on the overall strategy or performance on that individual strategy for that instrument, or total P&L, P&L history, capital history, with the timestamps, again, very critical from if you're going to have a problem with interactive brokers for whatever reason, say, here's the impact it had on my system because of this that you caused. Very hard to prove, but if you log everything and log everything in a smart way, you have a pretty decent case to take it back to the broker. So here we have a log portfolio, timestamps, date, all that fun stuff, portfolio update, blah, blah, blah. Goes through each strategy with the name, with the P&L and name, and logs everything. Okay. So we get the strategy P&L. This is the important one right here, the rebalancing or the optimizing of the strategy. Okay. So basically what this is doing is if the market conditions change, you may have to reallocate your allocation. So for instance, I've done this for demonstration purposes. We have this strategy is losing money, click it off. Okay. So you have to have the capability somehow to be able to turn that off. Here is where you need to calibrate, or in this case, where they will say we've got to re-optimize uh, all the weightings and allocations on those strategies and the capital for those particular strategies. So in this case, we optimize them. So here it lists them out, well, the strategy names. We forecast the returns for each strategy. Quite interesting here. Get the forecasted return, all AI driven. Here's doing a loop here on each one. Very cool. I think the coding quality here is quite good. I can understand it. Here we measure out the risks as well. The 0.5% and 1%, I probably have to look back in the executive summary or my prompting where this comes out, but it's going to come from somewhere. These actual hard coded numbers again would have been helpful to see references to that on the commenting front for when you revisit this at another time. Okay, so we're going to log all the information out, the risks, strategy name, and returns so far, optimizing the allocation. Here we have define the objective function to find the maximum return. So here we have the weighting. R, I would assume, is risk, and it's going to go through the weight and the return. That's what I thought. And it's going to measure out the negative portfolio return, negative because we want to maximize. Yes. So we have a constraint here that we add. The summary of the weight times the risk, looping through the weight and risk. I'd have to debug this to really understand this, but um, again, how I'm visualizing this is where, you know, I could generate this strategy and 3 days from now I'm using another one, and then this code may not be great because it may not perform. If it's performing great, I'll keep it running. And this code becomes more valuable as hopefully it profits over the long run. So here, initial weights with the equal allocation. Again, I'd have to debug this to really understand what's going on. We have our bounds and our constraints. So this is the interesting thing. We offer 10% allocation or 80% per strategy on the weighting on the allocation. Sum to one, so that's why it's negative, right? I believe, or I can't remember if that's allocating based upon percentage. Um, so here we're running the allocation. Now, this is where it's really important to run this and debug it to see what it's doing. This is why it's important to reverse engineer this. It's probably the most complex part of the whole thing that I'm showing. So we have an objective, initial weighting. We are using this SL stop loss SQB. Oh boy, this is beyond my pay scale, I will admit, but we've got a solution for that. hmm We do. I'm not stupid. We can use the AI for that. So we have the percentages, the weighting as well, and we have our messaging, any exception. Here's our main application to kick off everything. So let's go through that. Okay. Okay. So this is the main function, right? Or the display on a so-called dashboard. Clear the screen. Have our date time. What I showed you at the beginning. All the IBTWS info. So here it's tracking portfolio status, current positions, market data, recent trends, trades, and then the strategy and the overall important stuff, the core of it, status, capital, P&L, signal generated, trading, executed, and all of the Z-score stuff. And this is just on one strategy, arbitrage, that I've also gone through. And this green is really good for if you have a loss or a positive current Z-score on that particular asset, which is the futures, and one strategy and an arbitrage between the future contracts of the micro on oil, crude oil, against the ETF. Interesting. And then we have the position direction as well, and the status saying, hey, yeah, we're running. Yay. Okay, so here's the Headless app. We've got our parameters. Again, gotta know how to set that up. I've covered videos on that. Starting configuration, logging all that fun stuff, kicking off and instantiating the IBManager portfolio. Here's our initial capital. I don't know where that gets set. I'm sure there is toggles on the command on the arguments before we launch the Python script. That may be part of it. Um, and then we have our Crude strategy right here. We set up. I do remember I specifically want to see a second strategy as well, but it's good that I kept it to one basic strategy. Okay, so we add that particular strategy class to the portfolio class. Okay, so that's how that's done. Okay, this is important to know when you go back to revisiting how the portfolio class is managed because we're now managing the class from the strategy specific to micro crude oil arbitrage strategy. Okay. And then you can add in a second one. Again, it can be Russell or whatever it comes up with. But in this case, we're just doing the one strategy. So it's better to do it that way. So here we connect into the TWS, connecting, blah, 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 blah. And then we kick off all our portfolio managers with those strategies. Uh, we have active strategies running in the portfolio manager. This is really well architected. Very, and again, this is AI. So here's our main loop right here. Um, let's see that. Yeah, so we have our main symbols, date and time, blah, 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 and then our print status. So it's going into the main loop here. Okay, so it's a while true loop. And then we measure uh, our heartbeat, that sort of stuff on the connection to the TWS. Um, and then we have our market data come in. Very, very well designed as far as I'm concerned. It's the simplest you can get. Here, we have our strategy, executing our trading strategies with the strategies, so you can have multiple strategies. So you could easily code up those strategies with multiple adding on to the logic here in the current code. So this is a pretty good code base to work from, to be truthful. Let's go back to where we were. So here in the main loop, so we're checking on the signaling, our open positions, or executing the trades for each strategy. Then we update the P&L. Once that's done, we save the logs periodically every iteration here in this loop. We're going to check on the dashboard display periodically. This is text-based, um, which is for the better as far as I'm concerned, because to move it from Windows to Linux or whatever, it's just a pain in the ass. This is probably a better interface to go with. Display the dashboard. This is another key thing here. This is why I don't like doing it in something like Streamlit, because it's a text based. It will sleep every 10 seconds, it says, or whatever your interval is. But if you do it in a front end, depending, it flickers. And if you can get rid of the flickering, fine. If you want to spend the time, do it, fine. But this is a better interface to go with as far as I'm concerned. It's more portable and it's better. Then we have our exception handling, keyboard input. This is important as well because I've seen it. If you're running Streamlit, it may not break at all if you have a keyboard interrupt. So this is good that they have specific exception handling for that, and a generic exception handling, and then the final where if there is a key interrupt, close all the positions, disconnect, save all the logs, and then terminate. When the AI, because it's Claude 3.7 reasoning, I didn't ask for this, but it's smart enough to make and put this kind of code in there, which is really important, because um, you never think about it. If you're using a subpar LLM provider like OpenAI or Grok, it will not do this, but Claude does. I can't say about Quen or Quen or whatever other AI out there, but this is why I personally think Anthropic, Claude is easily the farthest ahead of any of the LLMs that I've used because it does this. Really important to know. This is the other important thing I didn't ask for, but this is the smart architecture that Anthropic brings as part of its um, just extra features that it throws in. So you can throw in party arguments, the host, the port, client ID, which makes it generic, as I said. So you could run this remotely, have this script run remotely on your computer and then connect into where your TWS resides. This is what I thought. The starting capital, $2,000. You can put in a configuration file if you want it for the extra security. Where do you want the logs to reside? What directory? This is another interesting one. I thought whatever the interval you have, so it's checking in the loop on every iteration when it sleeps and how long it sleep for. Really smart here. The interval, how frequent you want to log. So this is every 3,600 uh, 3600 seconds, and a display interval as well. So it's going to do it every 15 seconds. Really smart AI, amazing results. So here's the where to kick off everything as part of the argument that you feed in with your uh, Python command running this particular script. And that's it. As I said, this will reside on my GitHub. The next big stuff. Okay, so I'll provide this as well. I asked for the AI, Claude, to give me a coding breakdown. So even if I'm wrong on any what I'm saying here and it's not very specific, voila, it's all here. Here's the architecture. We've gone through this. We have the IBManager, a class, and then three subclasses, as I said, strategy, portfolio, and terminal. Okay. And it's a terminal display application. Okay. So we're using this package, terminal display. Okay. Um, and then here we've got a print status, and it just walks you through everything I've just done. So it integrates also with the IBManager for the Python API. All the necessary things here: connection, market data and order, position tracking, error handling, health check, and logging. Okay. And then it will walk you through again all the stuff I've already gone through. This is the important one, is the strategy implementation. So if you wanted to go through this, you could do it and use this as a coding base. You could probably do it. Um, and add in other new strategies you want. I'll put that on my GitHub. I think I never thought of this, but providing this as a coding example as the base in a really clean, simpler, uh, quote unquote platform, it's all here. Okay, so here in the strategy implementation, these are the necessary functions that you have as part of the class, the strategy class. So as I said, we have a micro oil arbitrage strategy as an example. So here's the calls. Okay, we're using Z score and all that. So here components are the Z score, signal generation, position sizing, trade execution, and P&L. I can't get any more detailed than what I've shown you other than yourself reverse engineering it and doing it the smart way. Okay. I can only put so much. I already got an hour and a half video on this. Okay. With the portfolio manager, again, another critical part of the overall script or trading system. But again, we have strategy management, capital allocation, performance tracking, and optimization. Very flexible. Okay. So again, generated by AI, because this particular LLM, Claude 3.7 reasoning, is the best in class. Probably 4 is pretty good too. I just don't want to have to pay for it right now. Otherwise, I'd be charging a lot more money than I currently do, because this does cost money to use all this AI the way I'm doing it. So we have our main app as well. So we instantiate all of those classes I just mentioned. Um, okay, so here's this is what I love about um, about Claude, because I said just show me how to build and deploy this, and it brings me up all of this detailed level thing. I specifically said this is going to be for GitHub, so it's already going to give you all that. So here's going to tell you all the necessary packages, dependencies it needs. Um, it will tell you how to set it up because it's going to be hosted on the GitHub. Of course, my username will be whatever it's called Quant Labs. So it'll be that. Um, Create a virtual environment if you want. You install everything. Um, Not sure if I will have the requirements list, but this is all standard Python stuff. So here, how to run it. Okay, I've gone over it. The TWS host address, port, API client ID, which has to be unique for each time you run it in parallel with other scripts that do the same or other anything that connects into the TWS and actually connects into the interactive brokers. Period. Path to the configuration, your starting capital, where you want the log files to reside. Signal frequency check 5, log frequency, whatever. Very simplistic. but effective. So here you can create a JSON file for your persistent settings. So this could be set up if you have a cloud environment, you're going to run this on, set this up, and then using the JSON, right? And then you can have it run basically your main app, okay? And then you can have it, in fact, feed it. It sounds like using that configuration file, that JSON configuration file, if you want. So all I got to do is just name this JSON file config and then run it here in the main Python script. That's pretty smart. You can also set it up as a dashboard navigation. So this automatically updates on the display interval. We've already gone through that on what you put in the argument or the parameter. You can deploy this. This is really, 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 really important. If you are going to run this locally, the TWS is running and configured to allow your API connections. I assume you know how to do that as well. So you could set this up with a server deployment as well. This is smart, man. Recommended over TWS for server deployment. Configure IB gateway to start automatically and create a systemd Linux or Windows server to run that. And you also want to run that using the JSON files part of the to start, and then uh, you run it with these following parameters wherever your TWS is, or the host that you're running this script on, so that your TWS can connect into it along with the port, and the client ID, which should be unique if you're running anything in parallel. Uh, and then you can have your dashboard navigator, all that fun stuff. And as I said, you control C to get out. So for local deployment, pretty straightforward. That's what I'm doing for now. If I build off it, I don't know if I'll leverage off it. Now, this is where it gets very interesting with the uh, for server. This is important here to use the IB gateway, and the IB gateway is totally different from uh, from the TWS. So that's more pure. It's not connecting any software on the system. It's actually connecting into a API. Now, how reliable it is, I can't say. Um, so that's what it's suggesting if you're going to run this on a server. Then you have your initiation file right here, uh, along with the starting in the service. You can also run it in Docker. And one thing I have to say about Docker is a complete mess. AI, awesome to generate actual Docker container files. Thank you. So here's your Docker file, all that right here. Build and deploy the container, run it, and then you can do the same setup. And you do the server, and in case you get knocked out. Now, when you're connecting in the IB gateway, it's a totally different animal from the TWS. So if you're going to run this on a server remotely, yeah, you got to look at the IB gateway for that. Reliability, I don't know. I can't say. So here's all your standard issues, how to look at this is important. I personally add in, as I said, with the trading object comes back um, from the broker when you put out either uh, whatever order you want to log that on top of. So you want to add that to your order execution, just as a form of insurance in case you run into a problem. And then contributing standard stuff, licensing, MIT, whatever. I'm not, there's no roadmap to this, okay? Because I'll tell you what, this will be coded up today, okay, as is, and then it's going to be custom coded for the market conditions in a few days. So at the end of the day, what I just showed you could be disposable, okay? Is this valuable? I don't know. I'm just making this video to help people to get an idea how these things work specifically in Python because it's easier. But I've got an hour and 40 minutes to explain this stuff. from a primitive, simple Python script generated by AI. And you haven't seen nothing yet. We have not added any complicated quant stuff. Any look at what you could add to it. Uh, better risk. Like this is what you could do with it. Micro equity futures. So you could make it generic. You could add volatility strategies. Well, I could customize those and add it into this basic platform. We could also add in the machine learning integration, and that's where you maybe use something like the MCP servers, which would be very interesting. I mean, you could do anything with this type of thing. But we could build up better reporting, web-based, daily performance. And as I said earlier, you could just use the basic interactive brokers apps and portals, whatever they give you for better. Just have some kind of AI software journaling web service that can log into it and just really analyze your portfolio if you really go sophisticated with this, just on a whim, let's just say. And better risk management, obviously. The risk management is an important thing. You got to make sure that this thing is really bulletproof when it comes to the position sizing and really comes down to the drawdown control. Because if it does crash, which it could, I don't know the future here. That maybe it'll just close out all your position. Correlation as well is very helpful. I mean, you might have seen the correlation risk matrices that some of this AI can generate. It's just unbelievable where we're at. And to be truthful, for this whole process, to be able to take an executive summary document from a set of futures, uh, and then say turn it into code like this, what I'm showing you, to go through the full iteration to get it runnable. Runnable is the important part. It doesn't take long. I could do it in one cycle. I could do it in 3 cycles, 4 cycles, but not very much. Um, that's the powerful thing about this AI. And I'm watching people go, I don't want to use AI. Well, I don't know why people wouldn't, because the AI is so helpful here as just one example. Even though it explains it a lot, it's mind blowing. But that's why I have my Quant Elite membership to talk about this stuff, to build out a community of people who are like mine, want to trade and do trading as a profession. Okay, not in a job situation. One thing I did read, which I think will be very valid, as more and more layoffs come along, the entrepreneurial is the only way to make money. And to be a trader here, to be successful, uh, this is all you got. And we'll leave it at that. I would not, personally, I would not use a third party service unless you're part of a community doing this stuff and talking about behind a paywall. And what I will tell you, just from the things that I've seen, you don't want the tire kickers. You don't want to have the people that just leech off you, that feel also self entitled. They're just not good folks to have in a private community. You want people who are like minded, who are very, very serious about futures and options trading, or you could add in other asset classes, could be stock, could be ETF, and gets really serious. So that's why I have my course, okay? Because that's how you get serious, by learning that over a month every day of being drip fed to you, okay? But that's where we're at. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Pretty sophisticated video I put out. We'll see what the media clips come out of this, but thank you for watching and sticking it out to an hour and 3/4. Over now.